Welcome, friends, to the Someone Gets Me podcast. I am your host, Dianne A, and I am so delighted that you're here. This podcast was created because I believe there is a visionary leader inside each one of us who is waiting to be seen. In each episode of Someone Gets Me, you will hear useful tips from successful visionaries who will share their stories about how being seen has allowed them to take their vision out into the world with action. Being neurodivergent in a neurotypical world. Hi friends, it's Dianne here, and today we are talking about what it's like to be neurodivergent in a world that's built for neurotypical people. Being neurodivergent myself and only working with neurodivergent people, there are all kinds of stories and experiences, both joyful and very, very sad and full of grief and pain. There's all the range in the middle. So today I'm going to talk about 5 things that we face as neurodivergent people in a neurodivergent world, and different things we all can do, whether we're neurotypical or neurodivergent, to be able to make life a lot more harmonious or productive or satisfying, whichever one of those things you're looking for, or something else. So here at Someone Gets Me and my company Visions Applied, I work solely with people who are outliers, who maybe are in the limelight and see the world a little bit differently, or maybe trying to excel in an academic or a scientific kind of way, and the way they think and process is not the same as the others around them. So I want to start a little bit with what I see as neurodivergence. Now, this is not meant to be diagnostic in any way, shape, or form. If you've listened to any of my content already, you realize I like to speak to the practical application, the real world way we do things, because the diagnosis is important if it's important to you, right? It is. And understanding the theory and the intellectual part and how it all works is great and important. And I know that and understand that. So if you want to have that discussion, schedule a get to know you call, and I'm happy to have that discussion. This podcast is about the practical application out here in the wild, in the world. Because see, neurodivergent people process things differently than typical people. Now, I have a hard time with the words neurodivergent and neurotypical to start with. Because in my belief system, because we all have different nervous systems, different histories, different DNA, then on some level, all of us are neurodivergent. Like the whole world is divergent from each other. But if we take away that bigger picture and we start looking at what these words actually mean, like in our culture, within the paradigm that we're using, we see that neurodivergence includes ADHD. It includes being gifted. It includes processing the world differently than maybe someone else who processes the world more typically like the average person. So it all comes down to if you want to label or not, or what you want to call it. So when you hear me say the word neurodivergent, what I'm talking about is those of us who process the world a bit differently, like a real sensitivity to sound or noise or temperature or taste, or a startle response because things are exaggerated and feel intense and heavy. Now that can also look like PTSD, right? That increased startle response. That's why there's so many different overlaps, right? I see being gifted itself as being a neurodivergence because part of being gifted is a different processing. In other words, we take in the world differently. I work with a young man who's in college, and he is one of those people that he'll learn something from a professor, from me, because I'm mentoring him, or from his family or anybody. And he'll listen and won't say much back. You're not even really sure he's taking it in, really. And then about a day or two later, out come the questions, because he processed. He molded over. He put things together in perspective form. He took the information, integrated it, processed it, and then came up with his questions. That's a form of neurodivergence. On the other side, I also have somebody I'm working with who happens to be a gentleman who's in college getting ready to graduate. He processes very differently. He processes very, very fast. He asks multiple questions quickly, quite the opposite of the other young man. But yet they're both neurodivergent because they process different than a typical kind of person. I mean, most mentors, I think, or therapists or even coaches would have a hard time with either of these people because one of them is going very, very fast and can digest things fast. And then he'll stop. He'll repeat it to himself, and I'll see it repeat it to himself. And then he goes, got it. The other person waits for a few days and then they get it because they're processing in the meantime. So their pace, the way they do it, the strategy of how they take information in and integrate it is variant from the average people, which is what's made their college career, their high school career, their education a little bit different. They've had struggles. They've had situations that they had to work through to accommodate and adapt a system not built for them. Thankfully, both of them are doing a really good job right now. And it takes a lot of extra work. So one thing that people don't realize is it takes a lot of extra work for those of us who are neurodivergent to get anything done in a world that's not meant for us. I laugh a lot because I'm 4'11", so maybe I could call myself height divergent, right? But I'm only 4'11", and so sometimes I can't reach things. When I go to hang something up in the closet, I have to use a step stool. I can't even reach into the bottom of my washer because they're making them taller now. Right? So the world is not meant for somebody of my height, and everything has to be accommodated. Everything has to be adjusted in order to function in the world. It's the same thing with my neurodivergence. I think differently. I process differently. I get overwhelmed much easier than a lot of other people because of the sensory input. In fact, yesterday, for some reason, people also who are neurodivergent, friends of mine, thought it would be cute to send me lots of pictures, one after the other. And so my phone was dinging constantly to the point where I had to silence it because it was agitating my nervous system. Now, there were several other people texting me at the same time, so it was really remarkable of all the timing. And at the same time, my nervous system didn't like that. And I had a response that was probably bigger than, oh my God, all my text messages are going off. Do you see the difference? There is something that is variant from average. So the other second talking point I want to talk about a little bit here is the fact that a lot of neurodivergent people have to mask in order to communicate. It's hard. It's hard and it's a struggle to hide behind whatever mask you have to put on to try to fit in, to be part of society, and to be heard or understood in any level. Looking for safety with people who care about us is sometimes tricky. I mean, if I look back on my life, but when I used to say, oh, I'm just like everybody else, that was farthest from the truth. But that was one of my masks. I'll just be like everyone else. The problem with that is it creates deep grief and existential loneliness, because the truth is we're not like everybody else, and we're not meant to be either. And so we end up with what I call identity fatigue, where we're trying to figure out who we are. In fact, I remember a friend of mine from a long time ago said to me one time, "You're just different in every situation. I don't know how to handle you." And I thought she was insinuating that I was dishonest or lying somehow. Well, really what she was trying to say was that I'm a really good chameleon, that I can camouflage who I really am and put on whatever outfit, whatever look was necessary for the situation. That's masking. Neurodivergent people end up doing that a lot because the world, again, isn't meant for a neurodivergent person in the same way. And so there's a lot of cost to this. Like, yeah, it's great to have this great asset, but there's cost to it. Our mental health. A lot of us struggle with depression or even anhedonia, where that means it's hard to find joy. We struggle sometimes with anxiety, with energy drain, with working really hard for a certain period of time and then having to shut down. We struggle with finding safety within situations because we get made fun of or laughed at, and our sensitivity that hurts even deeper than somebody who's taking it lightly. There's all of these things that create identity fatigue. Like, who are we really? I have many of the people that I start working with when I start working with them who ask that question. Like, I don't even know who I really am underneath all of the things I have to do to accommodate functioning in a society that doesn't accept me. And that inherent extra effort and work in trying to make it in a system that's not built for you takes a great deal of energy. It takes a great deal of patience and faith. It takes so much out of somebody that usually by the time we start working together, they're exhausted. And there have been times in my own life where I've been just totally spent just trying to make it in a world that's not meant for us. So that masking and that camouflage and then ending up with identity fatigue is a real situation that neurodivergent people go through. It's different than an identity issue as in a neurotypical way, or even some neurodivergent people have it with understanding their identity that we usually go through in adolescence or early adulthood, or maybe the midlife crisis kind of thing, right? Identity fatigue is we're tired on the inside, like tired, core based tired, because of having to play all these different roles and having very few safe places to be ourselves, where we can be our geeky, quirky, nerdy self, loud, quiet, laughing, crying, whatever. And the person with us or the people with us will just be with us. If we're crying, they'll sit with us. If they're laughing, they'll laugh with us. And it's safe. So many times I personally have shared my feelings with people who were called themselves my friends and close to me. And I've even shared my feelings and how I was doing with other professionals, with mental health professionals and other professionals, doctors and things like that. And I was actually laughed at, in my face, laughed at for my experience, which created more trauma and a sense of being unsafe. And so I understand deeply when people come to me that experience of not being safe, sharing who they really are, because I've experienced it. And it's a real situation in our culture where people are laughed at for being different or made fun of for being different, or worse, being attacked. So it is a very serious situation. And I believe that neurodivergent people are here to bring something good and new and meaningful and powerful to the world. And it's not an easy road at the same time. So yes, I have a big calling and a great vision, and I have enthusiasm for life. And at the same time, it feels like I'm running through jello because there's so much extra effort with some things I need to do or want to do. The third thing is I want to talk about communication differences and social differences. Oh my gosh, this could be a whole show, probably. I can't even count the number of times that I have been in a social situation and communicating, and I totally missed the mark. I remember one time I raced sailboats at the yacht club, and I had been gone for a while. I hadn't raced for a little while. I don't remember why now. And I came back, and I was getting ready to go on a race, and I was in my gear, and I was walking into the club, and like 3 or 4 of my friends that I've raced with over the decades, right? We're all like, "Hey, how you doing?" Well, I had a friend of mine with me, and I answered how I was doing. And I can't remember what all the facts were now, but I started giving them the neurodivergent facts of everything about how I was doing. And we got through 3 or 4 of those people, and I could tell they really didn't care about all of that, but they asked a question, so I answered it. And then we get over to making coffee, and my neurotypical friend, who I love so dearly because she helps me with these things, she said, "Diane, that was just them being a nice. They just wanted to say, 'Hey, how you doing?' That was like an extended hi. They didn't want to know how you were doing." And it was like a light bulb went off, like, "Oh, they asked how I was doing." She goes, "But that was a nicety. That was just them greeting you. They didn't want the whole story. That's why they looked funny." So there's those communication differences. That's that where a neurotypical person will just say a nicety or a quip or a one-liner, and a neurotypical person will take it word for word. This is how it is, and answer specifically. It happens all the time. So sometimes now when somebody says, "How are you doing?" I'll say, "Do you want to know how I'm doing? Or are you saying hi?" Or something like that. And people look at me curious, but my brain, as a neurotypical adult, processes these kinds of things differently than average people. So learning the social cues, learning the communication, and then remembering them when we're around neurotypical people versus neurodivergent people can be daunting sometimes. It can be challenging. It can be kind of fun. But all those things happen. Another piece of the communication thing I think that's real important here is humor. And gifted people have a different sense of humor, whether it's a dark sense of humor or a sense of humor that's a level different where most people take a minute to figure it out. There's humor that is expressed differently in a neurotypical and neurodivergent people. And gifted people, people with ADHD, will use a different sense of humor. Things that are funny to those of us who are neurodivergent may not be funny to a neurotypical person. And neurotypical people in a big social setting could be laughing at something. And we, the neurodivergent people, are kind of looking at each other like, what's up with that? Like, I don't understand. And somebody might have to explain it. So it's so interesting to watch senses of humor and how humor is expressed and what people think is funny, because that tells a lot. It tells a lot about how somebody processes or what they think about and the way their brain works. So it's really kind of interesting to me. I like to watch that because when I'm around a lot of my friends, and we'll go and I'll say something and half the people won't get it. And then somebody else will say something and other people won't get it. And then we'll say another joke that's more neurotypical and everybody will get it. And it will just be this interesting, beautiful melting pot of different ways of doing the world coming together. And so in my friend group, there are all different kinds of processing people. There's gifted people, there's average IQ people, there's neurotypical people, there's people who are neurodivergent in many different ways. And we all get along really well because it's safe. We are safe with each other. We can be our own little quirky people in our own little quirky ways and still love each other, and we feel safe. Now, that relationship in this friend group, we've been friends for decades. And so we've had to learn these things about each other. I remember one of my friends in this group, one time I said some funny line, and he's much taller than I am. And he patted me on the head and said, "Oh, you're so cute. You have a funny sense of humor." Now, I didn't exactly know how to take it at the time, but I laughed with him because I know he means well, and he did mean well, right? And so, but now he tells the same jokes with me and we laugh about those same similar things because we are similar in a lot of ways and we're safe with each other. So the safety in your peer group, in your family, in at least some tight people, at least like 4 or 5 people near you, is really important so that you can express who you really are, because there's so much miscommunication and misunderstanding. And sometimes it's somebody just doesn't understand the way you use the word, right? Sometimes it's you use a word that they don't know, and instead of them asking, they think they know and they're not correct. And so there's all different things. I'm lucky in this respect because my mom had love words. I guess that's where I get being an author from. My grandmother was an author too, so I think it comes down my maternal side. But one of the things I was taught very early in life was that language is beautiful and that words have multiple meanings. And before you use a word, know its meaning clearly and use it properly. And so that's important to me. And so what happens is, as I communicate with people, I mirror their language a little bit. I make sure they understand the word I'm using. It wasn't long ago I was having a conversation with one of my neurotypical friends, and I was talking about something, and I was using certain words. And at one point I finally stopped because intuitively I'm like, I wonder if she even understands these words I'm using. And I said, "Do you understand the words I'm using?" I was actually responding to a question she had. So it really mattered, right? And she goes, "No, I don't really understand." I said, "Well, are you going to stop me and tell me you didn't understand?" She goes, "No, I just figured I'd never understand." And so I stopped and I defined what I was saying and I changed my language set so I can answer her question in a way she could understand it, because I wanted to be that friend. So miscommunication and communication styles and understanding each other sometimes as neurotypical people have to ask us neurodivergent people what we mean, and back and forth, right? We got to ask somebody else what they mean. And we have to be willing to have those open communications. Another piece of the social part I think that's real important is the sensory issue. I go to events sometimes, and if it gets too loud or too crowded, I find myself on the periphery of the room or even sometimes leaving because I don't want to be in the noise and the stimulation. So there's that whole piece too. Like some people say, well, how can you go to Disney then? I was like, well, because it's open and I get to get lost in the crowd. And so in that way, my neurotypical self is happy and joyful. Other people I know can't take the stimulus, but I see it as something that lets me blend in versus be seen as much. So I can just be me, my quirky little self. So the fourth thing I want to talk about is that there's a lot of strength in being neurotypical. I mean, being neurodivergent. Well, I am being neurotypical too, I guess. Neurodivergent people have to adapt a lot to a world that's not meant for them. They have to find strategies to get themselves included or be heard or understood. It takes a lot of creativity. Neurodivergent people perceive things acutely. They can hyper focus. They have pattern recognition, idea synthesis, things that move. We see things and have strategies that are very, very different than a lot of the popular culture. And so it takes energy to do that, but we also build strength in that adaptation. We are able to come up with strategies to be included and inclusive in our world, in our environment. So neurodivergent people make good leaders because we can see the patterns, we see what's going on, and we're creative, and we can create inclusive strategies. That is something that if you're neurotypical, you have to learn from a different viewpoint in order to be a really good leader if you have neurotypical or neurodivergent people on your team. There we go. I'll get the words right, I promise. But the point is that neurodivergent people have strengths that they've had to develop over time because we've had to adapt in order to feel included and be part of society. We have strengths that we can use as we've had to adapt to a society not built for us in order to feel included even a little bit. Because when a neurodivergent person can deliver information and do things that and move a project forward in maybe a different way, but faster than other people, or they can see the data points or hyper focus in a way and check patterns in a way that others cannot, they're very valuable on the team. And so those inclusive strategies really matter. And the fifth and last thing I want to talk about is that neurodivergent people can get burned out really easy. We also can feel really isolated. I know I have to do a lot of extra self-care, more than I ever realized I had to in order to not be burned out. I love my work. I love working with my people. I love this show. I love writing books. I love all of it. And if I'm not careful, I can burn myself out with going, and not resting enough, like inner resting and regulating my nervous system. It's also easy to feel isolated because we live in a world not meant for us. We live in a world that's not set up for us in the education system, in most work environments. It's not necessarily safe. So we end up with different kind of health challenges. We end up with mental health issues like maybe anxiety or depression. We might end up with feeling alone and having grief because we are alone in the world, right? There's all of these things. So I think it's important for those of us who understand neurodivergence to create support in all different kinds of ways. Like I do a retreat where we can come together and just have time apart from the world and create something beautiful and a connection with new people who understand us in a safe environment. And so like in January coming up, I will be doing this retreat that I'll be facilitating and working to create a space that is safe and beautiful and powerful for people who see the world differently so that we can kind of come apart from the everyday stress and strain and focus on our own well-being and connection to others of like mind. That's one way. Then there's support groups, there's online groups, there's different chats. There's all different kinds of things in order to connect to other people. Another thing that some of my friends do is they're very active in an activism kind of way for neurodiversity. Now, a lot of people think neurodiversity is only people who are on the spectrum or autistic, and it includes that, but it's not only that. Some people think, well, it's only gifted people. Well, it includes that, but it's not only that. Neurodiversity is all about a different processing situation. And so those of us who process differently have a different experience of the world. And so how are we going to support ourselves and each other? And also, how are we going to support neurotypical people that look at us all confused because they don't understand? So there's all kinds of opportunities to build community, build connection, build bridges to allow those of us who are built differently to thrive and allow people who don't understand those of us who are built differently to also thrive. It's really fascinating and amazing to see people come together. Like when I'm with my friend group and we're all different in these different ways, then and I feel safe, my whole demeanor shifts from when I'm out in the world in a situation that may not energetically feel so welcoming and inviting. And so being neurotypical in a neurodivergent world takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of strength, takes a lot of support and safety. And so understand that, yes, I believe neurodivergence is a gift, is a superpower, is part of the evolution of the human processing brain. I believe that, and I see it in myself and in other people that I know. I also know that as the society has to expand, that there are many people who are going to hold on with a death grip to the old way. And holding on to the old way, it is counterproductive when we want to allow the whole of society to feel safe in a neuro way, in a neurological, societal, communication, social way. So how are we going to do it? We're going to do it by supporting each other. We're going to do it by being educated. We're going to do it by opening our heart and opening our mind. We're going to do it by understanding that our way isn't the only way, and that there's multiple ways to get to where we're headed. And just like there's many roads that lead to where we're going, there's all kinds of opportunities. There's all kinds of things we all can do to create something beautiful and amazing for the young neurodivergent people coming up, because they'll be understood. I'm older. I was never understood. I don't even know if I am understood too much now, except for by my neurodivergent friends. And many people who've known me for years to still shake their head. So those of us who are older maybe need a little bit more support or different kind of support for living a lifetime of not being understood and maybe even laughed at. When you get laughed at by a professional, that's not funny. When you get hung up on by the crisis line when you're a teenager, which is what happened to me in high school, that creates very deep wounds. Those kinds of behaviors are just not acceptable. And so I'm using my voice to help people see that being neurodivergent in a neurotypical world is not easy. And yet it's not easy for anybody, because everybody has to adjust and learn and grow. And so I'm inviting you to open your mind and open your heart and realize that a lot of the things that you think are true about the world may not be as true as we think they are. I think our limited human brains, no matter how gifted we are, can never see all there is. So let's open up. Let's understand that the title of the show, Someone Gets Me, that let's be that person that gets the other person. And maybe start with yourself too. Can you get yourself? So in the meantime, remember to put your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you, because you're a rock star. And I know this to be true. You are here on purpose with a mighty purpose, neurotypical or neurodivergent. Go out there, be your regular self. Go out there, let your inner light shine. And remember one thing: you're beautiful, you're lovable, and you are capable. You're here on purpose with that mighty purpose. So go out there. Seriously. I don't say go out there and let your light shine like for kicks. I mean it. Go do something with your brilliance. And then till the next episode of Someone Gets Me, this is Diane saying to you, be well. Thank you for listening. I trust you gained some valuable inspiration and information. Please join me and other visionaries in the Someone Gets Me Facebook group. Or for more information on my services and additional episodes, visit someonegetsme.com. Again, thanks for listening.